Weather effects are a popular mechanic in competitive Pokemon. These are field conditions that modify the game in various ways, changing how types interact with one another, buffing certain types, and activating special abilities that only work in a corresponding weather effect. Weather is a very straightforward and fun way to build synergies on a team. A rain team, for example, is pretty straightforward to put together. You have your rain setter, like a Pelipper with Drizzle, and then you put a bunch of Pokemon that synergize with rain on the team. The ability Swift Swim grants double speed in the rain, so you can throw that on. Rain Dish is another ability that synergizes with rain, granting a chip healing effect every turn if rain is active. When you think of a weather team, you're probably imagining something like that, the whole team being built around a weather game plan. But weather has had an interesting history in competitive Pokemon. It wasn't always something that you go completely all in on and build the whole team around. Weather teams and their identities have evolved a lot over the years, so I would like to go over that today. Take a look at how weather has changed from game to game and the different ways it was used in competitive. This will be a two-part video. In the first video, I'll go over just rain and sun, and in the second video, I'll cover sandstorm and hail. On a somber note, the dog days are coming to an end. It's the final day to acquire dog merchandise from JimothyCool.com. Check out JimothyCool.com if you're interested. Weather mechanics were first introduced in Generation 2, in the form of support moves that would summon the weather effect for 5 turns. The moves Rain Dance, Sunny Day, and Sandstorm were introduced in Gen 2. But I'd like to first talk about Sun as a weather effect, because Sun was the best and most competitively relevant weather effect in this debut generation of Gen 2 OU. At this time in the franchise, weather synergy was very limited. Abilities didn't even exist as a mechanic yet, so abilities like Chlorophyll, Swift Swim, etc. that synergize with weather were not in the game at all. So Sun teams were not really much of a thing back in Gen 2. Individual Pokemon would sometimes utilize Sun for an advantage though. The most basic effect that Sun provides is that it boosts the damage of Fire-type moves by 1.5x. It also reduces the damage of Water-type attacks by half. So, a Pokemon like Houndoom, for example, can use a Sunny Day set in Gen 2 OU to temporarily enhance its Fire-type damage while reducing incoming super effective Water-type damage. Houndoom also happens to have access to the move Solar Beam, which is one of the earliest examples of a Sun synergy. Solar Beam is usually a charge move, meaning it takes a turn of charging to be able to use it, and it will hit on the second turn. But if Sun is active, there is no charging for this move, and it is an impressive 120 power Grass-type attack with 100 accuracy. Fire and Grass form a solid coverage combination that hits a wide array of different Pokemon, so this set right here on Houndoom is decent. It's not that commonly seen, but this is an application of Sun in its earliest form. Moltres is another Pokemon that sometimes uses Sunny Day to enhance its offensive firepower, quite literally. And Moltres has a very impressive 125 base special attack. With Sun active and a Charcoal equipped, Moltres is actually able to deal a significant amount of damage to strong special walls, even Snorlax, the central and most defensively powerful Pokemon in the game. This is a very early example of weather having great wall breaking potential by enhancing a Pokemon's stab damage even further. Rain, on the other hand, is not as good of a strategy in Gen 2. Rain, of course, is a weather effect that increases the damage of Water-type attacks by 1.5 times and reduces the damage of Fire-type attacks by half. So you'd think maybe certain offensive Water types might be able to use this in a similar way to the Fire types for wall breaking potential, to power through strong walls like Snorlax. But not really. First of all, the defensive benefit of setting Rain for a Water type is not as good. Fire types, when setting Sun, reduce the incoming damage of Water type attacks, which they are weak to. But Water types already resist fire, so they're reducing the damage, but it was already a low amount of damage anyway, because they resist it to begin with. Another disadvantage of Rain is actually, ironically, supposed to be one of its synergies. Thunder is an attack with 70 accuracy and 120 power, and it's a popular attack in Gen 2 OU on the top tier electric types Zapdos and Raikou. Thunder not only has a higher base power, allowing for high damage potential, but it has a 30% paralysis chance, which is very useful and makes it quite spammable on these rather bulky Pokemon that can afford to miss here and there, because the high reward of Thunder and its damage and paralysis evens out that miss chance. But Thunder has an additional effect. In the rain, Thunder is perfectly accurate. It's a very powerful synergy, but unfortunately, if you're a water type that sets rain on the field, you have now just screwed yourself over, because a Pokemon like Zapdos or Raikou running Thunder doesn't even have a chance to miss anymore. They will hit you 100% of the time. It's perfectly accurate. And your switch outs are also going to be frightened of that paralysis chance. So setting rain is not as advantageous for a water type as it is for a fire type. On top of that, there isn't really a strong water-type wall breaker on the same level as Moltres in Gen 2. Vaporeon is a water-type with a higher special attack, but Vaporeon doesn't really want to use Rain Dance, not only because of the risk of being prone to Thunder, but also because Vaporeon just has Growth, which is a more straightforward way to increase its damage. Growth increases your special attack by 1 stage, which is the same amount of damage that Rain Dance would provide. It's a 1.5x increase to your damage by boosting yourself with Growth. You're not leaving yourself vulnerable to Thunder, and it's not temporary. Growth stays for longer than 5 turns. It stays until you switch out. So in Gen 2, Sunny Day is a bit more applicable than Rain Dance is, and it has some actual value. It's not the most universally used thing, and certainly much less competitively relevant than Weather would become later, but it's a very primitive example of Weather synergy being used. In Gen 3, Rain synergy was emphasized a little bit more. This generation, of course, had box legendaries, both with a weather setting ability. I'm not going to talk about the Ubers tier though, I'd rather focus on weather in OU formats. And in Gen 3 OU, there is no way to set Rain or Sun on the field with an ability. You have to manually set it with the move Rain Dance or Sunny Day. But this became a little bit more interesting here, and Rain in particular shot up significantly in viability. The ability Swift Swim was introduced to the game, which is the most classic of all weather synergy abilities, and probably the best. Swift Swim simply grants double speed in the rain. And this right here made rain teams a real thing. The best Swift Swim Pokemon in Gen 3 OU is Kingdra, because in just 1 turn of setting Rain Dance, you are doubling your speed stat, outrunning every single Pokemon in the entire format, including the speediest of them all, Aerodactyl and Jolteon. You're outrunning Gengar, Starmie, even Dugtrio. You're faster than everything. And Rain Dance is also enhancing the stab damage on Surf or Hydro Pump. So you're getting 2 positive advantages from Rain, a damage enhancement and a speed enhancement. It's kind of like using Dragon Dance, isn't it? Ice Beam is also complementary coverage, because Ice Beam hits grass types, which would resist Surf. And for the final move slot, you can use Hidden Power to round out your coverage. Some people use Toxic, some use Substitute. There are many options. But the crux of Kingdra is using Rain Dance to activate Swift Swim and the Water and Ice combination. It's impossible to talk about this metagame without bringing up the ever-presence of Sand, even though I'm going to talk more in depth about Sand in the next video. But Tyranitar is the only Pokemon in Gen 3 OU that sets a permanent weather effect. When Tyranitar hits the scene, Sandstorm is up permanently. So Rain Dance also serves the purpose of clearing sand, which can be a support for allies. Weather Clear is a good strategy in Gen 3, getting rid of Sandstorm, because Sandstorm deals chip damage to everything, so Kingdra works well alongside Pokemon like Suicune, who really like Sandstorm being eliminated, since it allows them to heal with leftovers. Ludicolo is another option for a Swift Swim Pokemon with some slightly different traits. Ludicolo has a water grass typing, which in some ways is a worse defensive typing. You are vulnerable to flying type attacks, which Kingdra isn't, and bug type attacks and the occasional poison type attack as well. That's not as common, but still something. But you have ground resistance, and that helps a lot against a lot of physical threats. Ludicolo is actually a great switch into Metagross because it happens to resist steel and ground, its 2 strongest attacking types that it has. Ludicolo also has access to Leech Seed, making it a little bit more useful in the mid-game, allowing you to leech some HP from the enemy, heal yourself back up, and allow safer entry points for allies too, as they can come in and heal off of the enemy who is seeded. Ludicolo also has a Grass Stab on Hidden Power Grass or Giga Drain, which can be useful to one-shot enemies like Swampert. It's actually not that commonly seen, even though it is a unique advantage, just because Leech Seed is usually a better use of the move slot, and Surf and Ice Beam do the trick offensively. Yeah, Ludicolo is quite good too. Ludicolo also happens to have Rain Dish, which is another Rain synergy ability added to the game. Rain Dish will grant an extra chip heal every single turn, the same amount of healing as a Leftovers, and stacking double chip healing is pretty crazy. This can turn Ludicolo into a pretty effective defensive Pokemon, and is a pretty interesting option sometimes. Swift Swim is much more popular, but you do see Rain Dish occasionally on this. And finally, there's Omastar, who is sometimes seen as a more niche Swift Swim Pokemon. It's a little bit harder to use than Ludicolo or Kingdra because of its rock-water typing, which is quite a bit worse defensively. Omastar is vulnerable to grass, whereas actually the other two are neutral to grass. That's a pretty big deal for them. They're also neutral to electric, both of them. Omastar, however, is weak to electric, ×4 weak to grass, weak to ground fighting. It's a lot worse on the typing side. It's weak to way more common things. But Omastar is interesting with its high defense stat and access to the move Spikes as well, which is an interesting extra option on a Swift Swim Pokemon like this. Sun strategies, on the other hand, in Gen 3OU are not quite as good. They did get an equivalent ability, Chlorophyll. This ability grants double speed in the Sun, same effect as Swift Swim, but for Sun. But the Pokemon that got this were not Fire types. No Fire type has access to this yet. Only Grass types have Chlorophyll, so straight away they're dealing a little bit less potential damage. Kingdra has the benefit of not only getting double speed in the rain, but stacking even more Water type damage, because it gets a stab boost on water moves and a rain boost. These Sun threats don't have as much breaking power because they don't have Fire Stab. The best Chlorophyll Pokemon in the game is probably Exeggutor in Gen 3. This is a Pokemon with some good stuff. It has Solar Beam, which is a stab move on Exeggutor with a high power, and that Sun synergy. You also have Sleep Powder on Exeggutor, and Sleep Powder with the high speed of Chlorophyll is very good. You can put even Aerodactyl to sleep if you're fast enough. Exeggutor also has access to Explosion. Another good option on a Pokemon boosted by Chlorophyll. A fast Explosion is great in this metagame. Unfortunately though, Exeggutor is way worse defensively than the good Swift Swim Pokemon Kingdra and Ludicolo. It sort of struggles to actually threaten as many things as they do after setting up its weather. It can be good when you Calm Mind Pass to it or use it for its weather clearing plus sleep and explosion. That's a unique set of tools, but it is not nearly as easy to use as something like Kingdra, who is actually a very powerful special attacking threat. Exeggutor is not quite on that level. And then there's Shiftry, who is also kind of okay. It also has Sunny Day and Solar Beam, and Explosion. Doesn't have Sleep Powder though, and has Chlorophyll with a Grass Dark typing. You could say this is a little bit better defensively because you got a psychic immunity at least that could come up in some scenarios, but Shiftry is extremely frail defensively, and once again it has the issue of not really posing enough of a threat after using Sunny Day. What's unfortunate about Solar Beam in this generation too is that if you click it and Tyranitar comes in, they set Sand on the field, which gets rid of the Sun synergy. Because now Sand is up before Solar Beam got executed. Therefore, you actually just get stuck there. You kind of get trapped by Tyranitar doing that. So they can go to Tyranitar, get rid of your Sun, which maybe you took a hit to set Sun, and then just switch to a Grass Resist because they know that next turn Solar Beam will hit, and now you're ruined. You are absolutely ruined. Kingdra, on the other hand, conveniently, just threatens Tyranitar if they choose to come in and reset weather. Yes, Tyranitar can come in and get rid of the rain, but they're taking a Surf in the process of doing that, which is super effective. The most useful application for Sunny Day in Gen 3OU is actually just to get rid of Sandstorm, not even to activate Sun synergy. Pokemon like Dugtrio or Magneton will run Sunny Day as a flex slot, so that if Tyranitar gets eliminated, you are able to clear the Sandstorm and enable teammates like Snorlax or Blissey who love to chip heal and hate Sandstorm. That's literally the best application for Sunny Day in the game, not even for its intended purpose, just to clear Sandstorm. So Rain is the superior weather effect in Generation 3. Generation 4 added some new held items that enable weather strategies. You have the Damp Rock and the Heat Rock to help assist Sun and Rain teams. Damp Rock will increase the duration of Rain Dance from 8 turns instead of 5 turns. And Heat Rock will do the same for Sun, increasing it to 8 turns instead of 5 turns. In Gen 4, it would seem that Swift Swim and Rain strategies were still the superior choice, mostly because they just had better Pokemon to synergize with the weather. Much like in Gen 3 OU, the only Pokemon that get Chlorophyll in Gen 4 are Grass types, and they just don't get as much out of that synergy and are more easily stopped. Sand is still ever present here, and they suffer from the same problem of Solar Beam being easily punished. Rain, on the other hand, is a little bit more naturally synergistic because Water-type Pokemon have Swift Swim, get extra stab damage on water moves, that stacks with the Rain, and they're just better at being offensive threats. In Generation 4, the physical special split occurred, which made it so that all types could be either physical or special, whereas before that, it was just predetermined. So, a physically oriented water type with Swift Swim like Kabutops became much better because it now has physical water moves like Waterfall to take advantage of. Kabutops became a great Pokemon as a Swift Swim threat, as did Quillfish. They both got way better in Gen 4, and Kingdra remains an excellent choice too, enhanced even further by new options like Draco Meteor, and the item choice specs, which are very synergistic and turn it into even more of an immediately threatening wall breaker. Generation 5 is absolutely the most weather-centric metagame in Pokemon history, and this is because the effects of the abilities Drizzle and Drought and the other weather-setting abilities were still permanent. These abilities set weather on the field permanently. They were not limited to only a few turns of weather, like the manual Rain Dance or Sunny Day. This has impacted Ubers since even generations prior, but in Generation 5, we saw some regular old Pokemon get bestowed with the godlike ability to set rain, sun, and other such effects on the field. Politoed was graced with the ability Drizzle, and Ninetales was graced with the ability Drought to set permanent sun on the field. Gen 5 has a very complex and tumultuous history surrounding weather that is honestly too crazy to get into in all of its depth here, but what people very quickly realized is that Swift Swim was broken. The ability that gives double speed in the rain. This ability previously only saw use alongside temporary rain, so there was a way to play around it pretty straightforwardly by waiting for the turns to end. It was not permanent rain, and you also had to take a whole turn sitting there clicking Rain Dance. It wasn't set passively by an ability, so there was more opportunity cost associated with weather strategies. Now that was no longer the case, as Politoed could come in and just set permanent rain on the field instantly. And it makes sense that Swift Swim Pokemon in particular were the strongest of the double speed weather Pokemon, because, as I've mentioned already many times, most of the Swift Swim Pokemon are water types, so they get stab water damage on top of the weather boost, making them immediately extremely threatening. Swift Swim Pokemon were dominant to the point of being ban-worthy, and there was actually a complex ban put in place to tackle this issue. Using the combination of Drizzle and Swift Swim on a team was illegal in Generation 5. This did not kill Rain teams though. Even without Swift Swim, Rain teams were fantastic, and they still are, because permanent rain allows Thunder to be an incredibly powerful option. Thunder, of course, has perfect accuracy in the rain, and is one of the strongest moves with its maximum capacity. Hurricane is another powerful rain effect, which also receives perfect accuracy in the rain. And there's Rain Dish. Tentacruel is an excellent Pokemon in Gen 5 OU, a defensive rapid spinner, with Rain Dish for incredible passive healing, with Black Sludge stacked on top of Rain Dish. Even just the breaking power of water type damage was really good here. Pokemon like Choice Specs Keldeo would abuse Rain to just click Hydro Pump and deal huge damage even to resistances. The stacking of water type damage is powerful on this Pokemon even without Swift Swim, so you can imagine how strong it was with Swift Swim. Even random water types like Feraligatr and Vaporeon are really strong in Gen 5 OU, or can be on the right teams, because of Rain and what it enables. The breaking power of water types is enhanced significantly. For quite a long time, Sun teams were also incredibly powerful in Gen 5 OU. Unlike Swift Swim, Chlorophyll was legal back when Gen 5 OU was current, and for a long time after that. And a powerful new Chlorophyll Pokemon was introduced to the game, Well, to be precise, it wasn't a new Pokemon, it was Venusaur, but Venusaur gained the new ability Chlorophyll in Gen 5 OU, which was actually a pretty fantastic fit. Chlorophyll Pokemon really struggled before this, but Venusaur, with the support of Ninetales for Permanent Sun, as well as Stab Solar Beam, options like Growth, which is also synergistic in the Sun, and Sleep Powder, Venusaur was a frightening Sun threat. But eventually they did just ban all of these double speed abilities, finding them to be too offensively powerful. That included Sand Rush as well. So Venusaur was no longer such a strong offensive powerhouse. This didn't kill Sun teams either, at least not quite yet, because there was another way to go with Sun, and that was with Stall, actually. The Pokemon Cresselia can actually take advantage of Sun in an interesting way, because it has the move Moonlight. Moonlight is a healing move that heals based on the active weather, and in Sun, Moonlight will heal for 2/3 of your HP instead of the usual half that Moonlight would heal without any weather, or the amount that Recover and similar moves would heal for. That's well above average for a healing move, and it turns Cresselia into kind of an indestructible monster. I mean, this is an incredibly powerful defensive Pokemon with a healing move that heals way more than usual. Sun teams would take advantage of Dugtrio to trap enemy weather Pokemon to try and win the weather war. By getting rid of the enemy's weather setter, you can set Sun on the field permanently and abuse Cresselia for the rest of the game with no hindrance. At a certain point though, Dugtrio's ability Arena Trap was banned, in most generations actually, not just in Gen 5. It was considered an unhealthy trapping mechanic that enabled stalled teams, which was true, it did do that. These Cresselia Sun teams with Dugtrio were certainly interesting as a way to abuse weather, but they were not fun to play against at all, believe me. While Rain remains very competitively relevant in modern Gen 5 OU, largely unaffected by these more recent bans, Sun has unfortunately fallen off a cliff in Gen 5 OU. The fact that fire types are weak to Stealth Rock is one significant detriment. Ninetales, the Sun Setter, needs a very reliable form of hazard control to even exist in the first place, and Ninetales itself is a little bit of a tough Pokemon to use. It is frail, it's worn down by those hazards. Politoed, on the other hand, even though it's a fairly average water type, is still pretty good. It's good at walling things, Mono Water's a good typing, it can click Scald, which is a broken move. It has options like Refresh and even Encore to play around boost sweepers. Ninetales does not have as much defensive benefit and is therefore struggling to exist just on its own, and then the synergies it enables aren't as good. There's no chlorophyll anymore. Fire types can be powerful wall breakers. Pokemon like Victini and Darmanitan, really strong fire type threats, can operate similarly to a Pokemon like Choice Specs Keldeo in the rain, just stacking fire type damage as much as possible. But all those Pokemon get pretty easily punished by a lot of things. Fire is not as spammable of a type as rain or water because Heatran exists, who has Flash Fire to completely stop you in your tracks, and is more common than similar water immune Pokemon. You also, of course, just invite in Politoed, who completely shrugs off fire type damage. And Politoed is just a sturdier weather setter that can stick around for longer and is more consistent at setting its team's weather. Ninetales is prone to getting chipped down and defeated. Sun teams do sometimes see play in high-level tournaments. Xatu is common on them because Xatu has Magic Bounce, which is a great way to reliably prevent Stealth Rock, as Stealth Rock gets bounced back from Magic Bounce, but they are not what they once were at all. In Generation 6, the weather-setting abilities Drought and Drizzle were nerfed massively. Now, they are no longer permanently setting weather. They are setting weather for the same amount of time as Rain Dance or Sunny Day the moves did. 5 to 8 turns. You can extend the length of Sun or Rain by holding a Damp Rock or Heat Rock, just like you can when clicking the moves Sunny Day or Rain Dance, but that's the only way to do so. The most powerful Pokemon that abused Rain in Gen 6 was probably Mega Charizard Y. Upon Mega evolving to this form, you will gain the ability Drought to set Sun on the field for 5 turns, and the Mega Charizard Y itself can take direct advantage of this, as an incredibly powerful Fire-type special threat. You have a massive 159 special attack, access to plenty of fire, stab moves, and even Solar Beam, which immediately becomes usable out of the gate. I think that the presence of teams all in on weather were significantly less in Generation 6. but Mega Charizard Y was a powerful weather abuser just in a single Pokemon slot. Didn't even need teammates to abuse weather on its own. Politoed actually fell from grace significantly in Gen 6, all the way down to the ZU tier. Is that the biggest drop-off we've ever seen from one gen to another? From literally a central Pokemon in Gen 5 OU to ZU ranked in Gen 6, which is as low as you can get. That's unfortunate. It should go without saying that Rain teams took a massive hit here, losing their permanent weather, and also contending with Mega Charizard Y and both base form Tyranitar and Mega Tyranitar being common presences. Tyranitar could also use an Assault Vest now, meaning it can actually come in on water-type attacks, and even though it's weak to them, you could shrug them off decently enough and just halt your whole weather game plan. I'm sure weather teams or rain teams in some form are occasionally seen in Gen 6 OU, but it's a massive drop-off from just the previous gen. They really went out of their way to nerf weather strategies in Gen 6. So in Gen 7, they realized, okay, maybe we went a bit too far here. Let's give weather some new stuff. So they gave us some more weather setters, Pelipper and Torkoal. Pelipper gained the ability Drizzle in Gen 7, which turned it from kind of a nothing, irrelevant water flying type that nobody used to an OU ranked Pokemon. This was enough to put rain teams back on the map. This and a few other things, but the addition of Drizzle Pelipper was massive, because Pelipper actually has pretty damn good traits for a weather setter. More so than Politoed. It has U-turn, which is a significant one, because it can set weather and then directly pivot to a Swift Swim Pokemon. Pretty fantastic for getting your game plan moving. Pelipper has the healing option of Roost, and it even has the utility of Defog to remove hazards from the field. So Pelipper is primarily used just to set rain. But it does more than that. It's actually a decent defensive Pokemon, it's a pivot, and it's a form of hazard removal. Pretty nice. What also made rain teams great in Generation 7 was how much better Mega Swampert became with a simple change to how Mega Evolution worked. Back in Generation 6, on the turn that a Pokemon Mega evolves, they don't actually gain the speed stat of their Mega form right away. So if their Mega form is faster than the base form, they will just have their base speed stat for one turn, and then gain the speed stat of their Mega form the turn after. This was significant because some Pokemon obviously want to be faster immediately on their Mega form, and the Pokemon who felt this most of all was Mega Swampert, because Mega Swampert has Swift Swim. You look at this Pokemon and you think, wow, what an amazing Swift Swim Pokemon. It has such incredible offensive stats, a great attacking move pool. But back in Gen 6, on the first turn that you Mega Evolve this, it doesn't receive the double speed from Swift Swim. It just has base Swampert's speed stat for a whole turn. And that is a significant drawback, because you have to probably click Protect, that's a waste of a move slot, and you're wasting a whole turn activating your Mega Swampert. Rain teams really want to be aggressive as soon as possible, so this was a huge detriment. But in Gen 7, this mechanic was changed, and Mega Pokemon just automatically have the speed stat of their Mega form, which is more intuitive, and much better for Mega Swampert, who now became an elite weather abuser. Perhaps the best we've ever seen? Maybe? I mean, the guy has 150 base attack, water ground typing, which is elite, stab on both, even complementary ice punch. You've got substitute I would sometimes use just for easing prediction a little bit. And you have stealth rock for extra utility, because why not? Mega Swampert was buffed massively by that mega change, and also by the presence of Pelipper, a much more reliable rain setter. You also had plenty of other great Pokemon that fit on a rain team. Tornadus Therian was a great one, just as a bulky pivot that also happens to have Hurricane, which synergizes with the rain strategy, since Hurricane becomes perfectly accurate. And you just got a nice mono-flying type with good bulk, regenerator, and the option of pivoting into your more powerful threats. There is, of course, Kingdra with choice specs on, a classic, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And there was even Ash Greninja, who was one of the strongest water-type special attackers we've ever seen. You do have to get a KO in base Greninja's form to activate Battle Bond to become Ash Greninja, but once you are Ash Greninja, in the rain, this thing is crazy. With wall-breaking power that killed the wishes it had back in Generation 5. You put a choice specs on this and just click water-type moves until Kingdom Come. Plus, you've got Water Shuriken, which is a priority water move that hits 3 times. And that's rain boosted and choice specs boosted and stab boosted. It's through the roof. It's incredible. And you got coverage, of course, Dark Pulse, Ice Beam, even U-turn if you want. So rain teams were elite in Gen 7. They were incredible. They were buffed significantly. I got a comment recently saying that I'm calling things elite too much. It's my word of the week. I'm sorry, rain teams are not elite. They are cromulent. They are agreeable. They are magnificent. They are tremendous. They're all sorts of different adjectives. Now, Torkoal as a drought setter was a bit of a step up from Ninetales. Torkoal is more defensively useful. It has a massive defense stat. It has utility like Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin. Yawn offers a bit of disruption. You've got Lava Plume and Will-O-Wisp as nice burn spreading options. So Torkoal was a bit better than Ninetales. Sun Team still suffered though in this gen. I mean, Rain just has the better abusers. I listed off all the incredible Rain Pokemon in Gen 7. Mega Swampert, Ash Greninja, Tornadus, Therian. There just aren't as many good Sun abusers, regrettably. Venusaur is still a decent Crawlerfell Pokemon that you can build around. And there are powerful fire-type wall breakers like Choice Band Victini with Stab V-Create, which is 180 power. I really like this one. This was my favorite Sun Pokemon to use back in Gen 7. But Sun synergy is definitely a little bit worse than Rain synergy here, just with less going on. I actually think it's a bit underrated in Gen 7. I had success with it back in the day. I'm sure the metagame has changed a lot though. But yeah, Rain, as usual, gets all the stuff, while Sun has been left by the wayside a little bit. Blacephalon was another good Sun synergy Pokemon, actually. A new Ultra Beast with a massive special attack, and great breaking power with Beast Boost, which ramps your highest stat on KO, which presumably on Blacephalon will be its special attack. But yes, Sun still suffers from many issues. Now in Gen 8, of course, a lot of Dex cuts happened, the infamous Dexit, removing many Pokemon from the game, many moves, and of course, previous generational mechanics, Megas and Z moves being deleted. So there's no more Mega Swampert, there's no more Ash Greninja. But there is still Pelipper with Drizzle, and Rain teams are still holding on as a viable strategy. Rain teams did get a new Swift Swim Pokemon, that being Barraskewda, who is quite a good Pokemon. Barraskewda is a very min-maxed Rain threat, uncharacteristically so, with really high attack and speed and very low defenses. Giving this Swift Swim almost feels like a waste because it's so fast already, but the speed boost does allow it to outrun everything in the world, even Choice Scarf Pokemon, even the fastest Pokemon like Regieleki and Dragapult, which are relevant in Gen 8. Barraskewda also has the option of Flip Turn, which is a newly released Water-type pivoting move. And this is fantastic because this, even though it has 60 power, which is a little bit weaker than comparable pivoting options like U-turn and Volt Switch, this is a Water-type pivoting move, meaning it is boosted by Water-type stab and rain damage. So Barraskewda can hit like a tsunami with Flip Turn and then pivot out and go to the perfect response. Pivoting is a strong concept in singles, it always has been, and pivoting with a weather effect boosting the damage of the pivoting move is even better, especially when you outrun the whole world. This is one of the safest things you can click, a Flip Turn in the rain on Barraskewda, so this actually added to the consistency of this kind of team. And even random old rain threats can still be strong. Seismitoad has Swift Swim, and this is a pretty strong choice. It has a good move pool. It's kind of like a budget Mega Swampert, where Mega Swampert doesn't exist anymore. And you can run this with a physical or special attacking moveset, since its offensive stats are similar. It's an example of how good the ability Swift Swim is, because this is a pretty unremarkable Pokemon, but Swift Swim makes you so much better that this is usable still. There is Crawdaunt, who is a great Water-type wall breaker. This was sometimes seen even in Gen 7 OU as just a guy that can click Crab Hammer in the rain with the adaptability boost and probably two-shot anything in the game if it has a Choice Band equipped. Even something like Toxapex, you could sometimes two-shot with a Choice Band Crawdaunt in the rain. One of the strongest wall breakers ever. And Crawdaunt also has Aqua Jet, which gives it some priority. This particular team is a sample team for Gen 8 that runs a Swords Dance Life Orb Crawdaunt to be a bit more versatile in being able to switch moves. And then finally there's Zapdos with Hurricane and Thunder, which both synergize with Rain and round out the type chart of this team. So this is a great example of a Gen 8 Rain team and how the archetype looks a bit different here. Lost a lot of options, but it's still fundamentally very powerful as a concept. And here is an example of a Gen 8 Sun team. Rain teams are definitely better in Gen 8, but Sun teams can do some stuff with options you would expect. Torkoal is here to set Drought. It has Body Press now as a new option, which is an attack that scales based off defense. A pretty nice option on a Pokemon with such high defense. Venusaur is used here as a Chlorophyll threat with growth. You have Heatran as a Scarf Fire type, providing a little bit of defensive benefit too with Flash Fire for Fire type immunity. Landorus Therian is just being used as a typical pivot and hazard remover, which is very strong here. Landorus Therian became even better with Hidden Power getting removed, because nothing can hit it with Hidden Power Ice anymore. Blacephalon, with choice specs, is yet another very nice Fire type wall breaker. And Weavile's here in the last slot, I guess, just because it's very good. It's also worth noting that heavy-duty boots were introduced in Gen 8, which is actually a pretty nice option to consider on teams like this. Heavy-duty boots grant hazard immunity, which is helpful to both Pelipper and Torkoal. Usually they'd rather still run their Damp Rock or Heat Rock just for the extra turns of weather. But it's a nice option to help them come in on hazards more easily. And it's also helpful to Fire-type threats that can actually exist now without needing a Rapid Spinner or Hazard Remove. Since Landorus Therian is more effective at using Defog now because less things threaten it, less electric types have ice coverage and ice coverage is less common overall. This also helps enable Sun teams such as this one, as rocks are not as much of a problem. And now we're here in Gen 9 OU where weather has gotten kind of interesting, because for the first time in a long time, Sun is the superior weather. Rain has been more consistent and more popular than Sun for generations. It is just more naturally synergistic, as Rain Pokemon tend to have Swift Swim, which is more beneficial to them. There are also stronger synergies with Rain in general, like Thunder and Hurricane. But in Generation 9, we saw the release of Paradox Pokemon, in particular the ancient Paradox Pokemon, which all have the ability Protosynthesis. And this ability grants a boost to your highest stat in the Sun. So this is massive for Sun teams. One of the disadvantages of Sun teams is they're kind of restricted in the type of the Pokemon they could use, because, you know, most Chlorophyll Pokemon are grass types, most Fire type wall breakers are Fire types obviously, so they're restricted to the same types of Pokemon. But Protosynthesis allows Sun synergy to exist on a wide variety of different types. You have something like a Great Tusk, a great bulky ground type. Now he gets a Sun synergy. You've got Roaring Moon, a Dragon Dark physical wall breaker, perfect. You even have Walking Wake, the first ever water type Pokemon that gets Sun synergy. Not only does Walking Wake get a Protosynthesis boost in the Sun, it also has the move Hydro Steam, which turns weather mechanics on their head. Hydro Steam is a water type special attack that completely ignores the usual debuff to water type moves in the Sun. It is not halved in its damage, and in fact it gets a damage boost in the Sun. A water type move that gets boosted in the Sun. Walking Wake is one of the best Pokemon on modern Sun teams for obvious reasons. It's fantastic to be able to have a water type on a Sun team, just to round things out defensively. And Hydro Steam is an incredibly powerful move as well. Torkoal has been popular as a Sun setter in the past, but Ninetales has even come back to the forefront because it's just a little bit faster than Torkoal. It has Weather Ball to actually do a bit of damage. It's a bit more proactive than Torkoal and aggressive, which Sun teams want to be. They want to just attack the enemy with these strong Protosynthesis Paradox Pokemon, back to back. Ninetales also happens to have Healing Wish, which sacrifices yourself to fully heal an ally and restore all their status ailments. This is an incredible momentum play that can also recover a powerful Sun threat like a Walking Wake that might have been paralyzed or something and damaged. Now it's back to full fruition and it's destroying everything. So Ninetales is actually having a bit of a renaissance in Gen 9. That's cool to see, the old Gen 5 Sun setter. Rain teams, on the other hand, have had an interesting experience. They've had ups and downs. In the initial metagame before any DLC, Rain was a decent strategy. People were actually using Floatzel as a Swift Swim threat for lack of much better. Barraskewda was also in the game at the time, and that was okay. People were even using Golduck with Swift Swim as a special attacking water-type threat in the Rain. We didn't have Kingdra at the time, so this was the best option. Kind of funny. There was also Quaquaval, the new water-type starter, which has a strong water-type signature move, Aqua Step, which boosts speed while hitting the enemy. You also had some really broken rain synergies for a time. There was Palafin, who existed very briefly. Palafin is a little dolphin that, upon switching out and back in, turns into an incredibly powerful superhero that has extremely good stats, 160 base attack, great bulk, water typing, and the move Jet Punch, which is a 60 power water priority move. That on rain teams was incredibly broken, and Palafin ended up getting banned actually. There was also Archaludon, who had an incredibly powerful new Rain synergy. This is a Steel Dragon type Pokemon with fantastic stats and the excellent ability Stamina, which grants a defense boost for every single time you get hit by any kind of move. And Archaludon has the move Electro Shot. This is a 130 power electric type special attack with 100 accuracy, but it's a charge move. The first turn is spent charging, you get a special attack boost while charging, and then on the second turn it hits. But in the rain, it has no charge effect. So in the rain, this is just maybe the best weather synergy move we have ever seen, because it's a massive electric type attack, even stronger than thunder in its power, that also raises your special attack before connecting, and your special attack is really high. So this is incredible. You don't even need a power herb or anything to activate it like you do with Meteor Beam, a similar move, because it just activates in the rain with no charge. This was broken, and it certainly didn't help that this guy had a body press and stamina. So you're attacking this guy trying to eliminate it, it's so bulky, and it's gaining defense, which increases the damage of body press. And now it's hitting you so hard from every angle, because body press is physical damage, Electro Shot is raising special attack. So Archaludon got banned, it was a bit too powerful. Rain teams were at their peak with the Archaludon release, but at the moment Rain is in a really tough spot, and largely it's because they, for the first time ever, don't have as many good abusers as Sun teams do. Sun Pokemon have all of these fantastic Paradox Pokemon to throw onto Sun teams and get a straightforward advantage. Rain teams have some good Swift Swim Pokemon, but not like the options they had previously. And Water type is actually less spammable now in Gen 9 OU because there is an incredibly prominent Water Absorb Pokemon in the metagame, Ogerpon Wellspring. Ogerpon Wellspring is one of the top threats of the metagame. It's very commonly seen, and it has a Water Grass typing, which is kind of a death sentence for rain teams. This guy is totally immune to Water type attacks, and it is neutral to Ice, which is often the complementary coverage. So this shuts down the vast majority of Water type threats. This will still be affected by Hurricane, which actually hits it super effectively, but the main draw of Water type or rain teams being the Swift Swim threats with stab on them, they can just ignorantly press buttons. Those are no longer that good because they're so easily stopped by such a ubiquitous Pokemon. Ogerpon Wellspring itself can also threaten many of them directly because of its grass stab and good grass attacking options, which certainly doesn't help. Sun teams are so fundamentally strong right now that we've actually seen a rise in some very interesting Sun abusers. There was a recent team using Leavanny, who I don't think has ever been used competitively to much success before this. Leavanny does have Chlorophyll, and it's a unique Chlorophyll with access to Sticky Web, so that unique combination was actually a cool way to enable offense on that team. There was also Whimsicott, who has Chlorophyll. No one ever uses Chlorophyll on this thing, but someone actually hit rank 1 with a Chlorophyll Whimsicott team because Whimsicott happens to hit a lot of important numbers in the metagame. It KOs King Gambit with a Modest Nature, a Life Orb, and a Growth Boost. It KOs King Gambit with Moonblast. That's important. You also happen to resist common priority moves, being Sucker Punch, Thunderclap, and Grassy Glide. You resist all those, and those are common ways to defeat, Swift Swim Pokemon or Chlorophyll Pokemon, but you're unfazed by all of them. And Whimsicott happens to threaten a lot of things with Shadow Ball, common switch-ins like Goldengo, Slowking Galar, and Pecharunt. Sun and Rain have evolved in interesting ways over the years. This mechanic of weather started out in a very basic form, just dealing more damage and taking less damage from specific things, as well as some moves benefiting from the weather. This evolved into weather abilities and entire weather teams eventually. Entire team archetypes built around maintaining weather. And it does seem that as one weather effect rises in popularity, the other suffers. The better Rain is, the worse Sun is, and vice versa. They punish one another in their own success. Right now we're in a rare instance of Sun being the superior one, with a lot of stuff pushing Sun in a more positive direction. Maybe that's well deserved after years of Rain dominating things, and to be honest, many Rain teams are quite one-dimensional. Their game plan is very simple. Game plan is mostly just clicking water moves with a very high power on them. Sun teams in Gen 9 are similarly kind of simple to put together. There are very straightforward pre-packaged synergies in the form of photosynthesis, but at least I enjoy the fact that Sun is seeing more variety. Weather teams often have the problem of the same kinds of Pokemon being used on them, but now we have a wider variety of different Pokemon that you can see on Sun teams specifically. Thank you for watching, and in the next video I will be talking about Sandstorm and Hail and their interesting histories. What do you think, folks? Which do you prefer, Sun or Rain? And did I miss any interesting Sun or Rain synergies that you think are worth talking about? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.